So thanks for doing this, first of all. I appreciate you taking the time out
No
repeatedly.
problem.
Um, so,
Happened to me as
so
well, Peter. Don't sweat it. This is this is.
like, but it's so rare, and it's so like it's actually like it's becoming more frequent now.
Uh,
Um, because I'm probably scheduling more interviews now. But just like if anyone cares, I so you're in Dubai and you're 4 hours ahead of me, and I thought you were. I knew you were 4 hours ahead of me because like
mm,
I'm not an idiot, but I forgot and was like, okay, so if I want to talk to him at 8 p.m. my time, that's 4 p.m. his time,
uh,
and just like had a brain fart.
that was
So then
wishful
I was
thinking,
at
Peter.
work.
Probably.
Yeah, I was at work and you text me saying, send me the link whenever you're ready to go. And I was like, fucking hell, he's very keen. I was
Super
like,
early.
we're not talking for another 8 hours. Like, what's he on about? And then it just dawned on me and I was like, oh, okay, no, I fucked up.
Uh,
So yeah, I appreciate your patience. How long have you been in Dubai for?
it's almost 16 years now. Crazy.
Okay,
Are we
and you're
on,
from
by the way? Are
Switzerland
we on
originally?
already? Are we?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Oh yeah. All right. Good.
yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, 16 years. A plan like everybody comes to Dubai is here for comes here for 2 or 3, and end up staying longer. And so 16 years is half a lifetime for some.
Yeah, where in Switzerland are you from?
Um, I grew up in a little town outside, yeah, between Zurich and Lucerne, so pretty much bang on in the middle of Switzerland, in the
Okay,
German-speaking part. My mother is
okay.
originally from the French-speaking part, and she grew up first speaking French, but I grew up in the German-speaking part.
Um, so what age were you when you left? You're going to give away your age now if you're sensitive about that kind of thing,
No,
but
I'm not sensitive at all. I can see grey hair and so no, not sensitive at all. I left when I was, yeah, pretty much when I was 30. I turned my whole life upside down. I moved. I'm
okay.
45 now. Actually, turning 46 tomorrow.
Oh, happy
But
birthday.
oh, well, yeah. So it's at 30 years old, I met my wife. She's actually usually people come to Dubai because their husbands have a job and then their wife follow, right? And I did it the other way around somehow. I'm from Switzerland. My wife is Swedish, and we met. I was on a sailing trip in the Baltics with two mates, and certainly not intending to meet my future wife, and but I did. And yeah, long story short, after a bit of back and forth between Sweden, Dubai, and Switzerland, because she lived already for 2 years, I came here and checked it out to see if I could live here, and I was really intrigued because that was in 2005, six when Dubai was very different. It was very, like 1001 Nights, a bit, exotic and not quite so such a hustle and bustle yet. It was really an interesting place, but it was just about the boom was just about to kick in, and I thought like this I would love to live here for a while. Didn't never thought it's going to take 16. Yeah, it's going to be here 16 years, but here we are.
And what does your wife do, or what did she do then?
She came here as an interior designer. She was hired by the rulers of the sheikh's company. She was headhunted for them, and she worked for them for 2, 3 years, and then went freelance as an interior designer. So when I met her, she was freelancing in Dubai, and so it's a good place then because really booming. I mean, price exploded. There was money, and people invested left, right, and center. So it's a good time. And then
She's in interior designing for the ruling
no, no, no.
family of Dubai. Must have been impressive. Like, be like, so do you want more gold or?
Yeah, a little bit like that. No, not for I mean, she did some stuff for the ruling family, but it's mostly she worked for a company owned by the sheikh,
Okay.
and so they did some pretty interesting jobs for sure. I mean, hotels and some. This was just started with those luxury towers with full concierge service. The whole Dubai shebang, the kind of
Mhm.
life we don't live, and um, and yeah, that was definitely an interesting time for sure.
And what did you leave behind? So what were you doing in Switzerland when you met her, like pre-sailing trip?
I was working for a big healthcare provider, private hospital group at the time. So I did
As a physiotherapist, was it?
in healthcare management actually. I mean, I did an
Okay.
economic degree, and then afterwards realized it's not really my world. So I went through my own injuries. I got into physiotherapy, did that degree. That was my main degree, and then studied manual medicine, and then. Yeah, I started to work for this private hospital group, and they kind of promoted me into management. and set up a few rehabilitation units, and then did more and more project management and kind of climbed the ladder with a few colleagues and worked, did several setups for instance, like a radiology unit and dialysis unit, and worked for this hospital group for a while, and that's when I met Marie. And so at one point, flying back and forth, I had to make a decision, right? What do we do? Where do we live? At the time, my Swedish wasn't that great, and Marie's Swiss German wasn't that proficient either. So, and we thought for us, both of us, it's good opportunities here. And to be honest, I mean, I loved the job I did, and I could have climbed this ladder continuously. It was a really good gig, but also I realized around me, most people were, hopefully nobody's listening, but most people were, workaholics and divorced and unhappy. And I just realized, okay, this could be my path and to success, but I'm probably not going to be very happy with it. And so I decided, let's do the jump and move to Dubai. And I came here for another healthcare management job, funny enough, for an international provider. And they promised me all sorts of things. It sounded all great. And when I had my first 2-3 meetings, I realized it's just hot air. And then I just told them, you know what, I'm out of here. And I just went back to the roots. I mean, I always continuously worked as a therapist, even in this hospital group. I never wanted to lose touch with my roots. I wanted to make sure, because in our field, it's really important that you have the experience, that you stay in touch with what you do. And so I just went back to roots, went full on back as a physiotherapist and manual therapist.
What you mentioned that you had injuries there. What injuries did you have that led you to want to do it, or when did they happen?
Ooh, how long do you have?
Was it playing sport?
Yeah, I did. I had a few. I used to play handball. It's a sport which I'm not sure how well known it's in
Like
Ireland.
Olympic handball, is
Olympic
it? The one
handball,
where you can
exactly. The
bounce?
one where you
Yeah,
shoot
okay.
on goals and tackle each other. I used to call it the mainland European rugby a bit, because it's the tackling is a bit less rough, but it's pretty much head-on collisions quite a lot, and so your knees, shoulders, ankles are a bit under distress. And so I had I mean, I'm not counting ankle sprains and ligament tears and stuff like that. I had I think I was 18. I had destroyed my ankle, my left ankle. I had some metal put in there. Came back.
Well,
Actually, funny. Somebody said to me, he said, "Oh, you play handball. You must have had so many injuries." I said, "No, never. I'm fine." 2 days later, I ended up in hospital, and so I had some plates put in my ankle. Bounced back, I think 3-4 months playing, and then I had a meniscus tear in my knee, so I operated that one, and then bounced back, and then I had a cartilage tear in my kneecap and had to operate that. So literally within about, shouldn't have never said that, opened Pandora's box. 1.5 years, about 3 ops. And that's when I became interested first time into that profession. At the time I was thinking, shall I study medicine, become a doctor? Something with sports, and kind of, it's kind of fell in place through my own experiences. But I had like broken ribs, broken noses, I had multiple sprained ankles, broken wrists, fingers, disc in my lower back, nerve damage in my neck. That was some CrossFit though, and lots of stuff, and muscle tear. So the list is long. Anyway, so I mostly, when I see clients, I can usually empathize with them, because most of the things I had.
they're describing their injury, and you're like, oh yeah, 2004.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that. You'll be fine. You'll
And
be all right.
what level of handball did you play? Like, was it like recreational, or were you like in a league, or how professionalized is handball?
Well, you can do it professionally, but you have to be really good, and to live off it. In Switzerland, you can't live off handball. You have to be really good. You have to
Yeah.
go to Germany, Spain, etc., France, maybe. And so the highest of was in the second highest division I played, and did this for a few years, and then first league for quite a few more years. And I was decent at it, would say. Was never really a question if I would go into that internationally, for sure. But we had a few good years. It's a great sport.
And what age were you when you damaged your ankle? You were 18, is that what you said?
Yeah,
Okay, and then also 18. The other two knee injuries
yeah,
were like 18, 19 then.
exactly.
Do you think if that had happened in, say, after 22 or 23, would you have just been like, oh, fuck this, I'm not going back? Like, do you think the three injuries happening if they happen at a different, like say 4 years later, you would have been like, nah, I'm probably done if the first one had happened.
Hard to say, really. I mean, injuries are so much part of that game, unfortunately. I mean, it's not a, even though I do have friends that never got injured or never seriously injured. But they're a bit part of that game. And yes, I'm sure there's a time when it's like I had enough, but I haven't reached that stage. But probably, so I stepped down probably around, I mean, I played some like second team games, which was a bit more recreational, and there it actually becomes more dangerous than if you play a bit more at the higher leagues, because a lot of people
Yeah.
compensate the lack of technique with pure violence, and it becomes actually much more dangerous. Even though it's a lot more direct, a lot harder, faster, stronger, everything in the higher leagues, but. Yeah, no, I mean, you know how it is when you do a sport, you're passionate about it, and injuries you take, you get back up and you move on. But at the age I'm right now, would probably well, I still get injured here and there, unfortunately, and I'm still don't say fuck it, I'm done. I just I believe in activity is just part of your life, and yes, if I would play
Yeah.
handball again right now, I don't think it would be good for my body. Actually, I went back once. I remember I moved back to Dubai, and I think in the first summer I went home and I met a few buddies in the restaurant. I said, "Hey, we have training tonight. Why don't you come?" I said, "No, I'm gonna be in peace. You're gonna have to carry me off because I'm not used to." I don't know if you played any contact sports, maybe rugby or so. It's the same thing, right? You get so used to the impact, it doesn't hurt. But then you go into
Mm.
the off season, and then you come back after a month like, oh damn, that really hurt. And so can imagine he had a hiatus of 3 4 years. So anyway, that talked me into it. But the first thing I did, I went to the pharmacy, bought shitloads of tape. I put like my wrists, I taped my ankles and everything. It was my livelihood. So literally, I came into the locker and taped up my everything. Looked like a mummy almost, and it was fun. But that chapter was over.
You mentioned as well that you had a trapped nerve from CrossFit. When did you become aware of CrossFit, or when did you start doing CrossFit?
Um, Yeah, somebody asked me that the other day as well, and I mean, how it came about. I couldn't tell you the year, but you have kids, so we had a daughter, and then you know how it is. The first 1 or 2 years, it's a priority shift, right? I mean, I always said I don't
Yeah.
have time. It's actually not true. It's just you choose different priorities, and so for a while, first time in my life, that sports took a bit of a backseat, and then. When I came back and I was here in a no handball team, right before I literally that says like, well, you every day at 7 o'clock you there you have training and then a morning session, etc. So you never have to really plan that, and all of a sudden you're out of
Mm.
this routine and you have to find a new sport, right? And we obviously did off season, we did quite a bit of strength and conditioning training, with some of this would be CrossFit-esque, I would say, but nobody would call it that way. But when I came back, let's say I want to get back into sport, a mate of mine who also had a kid, we decided let's do some martial arts, let's do some sparring, but we were both a bit out of shape, so we decided to get ourselves in shape. And he talked about this thing called CrossFit, right? And I was like, what the fuck is that? Like, yeah, it's like, we do a bit of upper body pull, upper body push, some legs, some core, and run around and sprint somewhere and basically do this multiple times. It was a bit, I don't know how well it developed. There was at the time for us, that was it, right? And so we went down to the beach and there was a pull up bar, parallel bars, and that's what we did. And we just got ourselves in shape. And we started sparring a bit for a while, and then he got another kid, so all of a sudden it was on my own again. I thought, like, I actually enjoyed that. I actually enjoyed that more than the whole sparring part, and joined the gym and started doing this a bit more seriously. And so, if you give me a time, not 100% sure, but I would have been probably a good 10 years ago or a bit more.
And have you done it consistently? Like, is that something that you kept up then?
Yes and no. I mean, the what I'm 191 in height, is about 6'3" and nearly 100 kilos heavy. So gymnastics have never been my strong suit, shall I say? But I actually loved it, weirdly enough. And so what I did at one point, I put pretty quickly. I realized, okay, I'm pretty strong, but I suck at gymnastics. I want to do up my gymnastic game, and so I decided I was obsessed with the idea of, okay, I want to get a strict ring muscle up, and I want to get whatever front lever, back lever, just get myself strong in gymnastics. And I started working on this and realized my path was a slightly heavier and longer person. It's a bit longer, and so I was ready to just make a commitment and get this. And I think it took me about a year to get something which takes other people maybe 3 months, but I was committed. And then when you know when you how it is when you reach a goal, you think, all right, got it. So what will you next? And I really fell in love with. I love rings. I love everything gymnastics. Funny enough, because of the challenge, and I think it has to do with my profession. That if you look at the gymnast, it's like this is where biomechanics and strength, everything comes together. If you have a power leak somewhere, something that doesn't fit, it's just impossible, right? If you do yeah, muscle up is one thing, a strict one, or a front lever. If your lats don't fire, something's not 100% right. It's just not possible. And so I think that's where the fascination came from. So I literally, before I knew it, it was like 3 or 4 years, I haven't lifted a proper barbell except for some accessory work. And yeah, and then from at one point I thought like, all right, it's time to bring the barbell back, right? And it was just about the time when I met, you just had him on the show the other day, Andre Uday.
Oh yeah.
And so at the time I started to take care of him, and I said, you know what, I'll take care of you, and you improve my barbell skills. And that's what we did. And some other stuff, some more CrossFit. He's a great teacher, so some more CrossFit specific stuff. I just want to get better at it. And yeah, so that's how. So if you say consistent, yes and no. I mean, in connection with the
Yeah.
CrossFit, yes, but not say that I would have been consistently hitting the open, etc. But for me, it's the only way to train. It's like this all around athleticism.
Yeah. Um, were you a college lecturer as well? Did I hear that somewhere?
Yeah, I did. I did for a while in Switzerland. Yes, I was teaching biomechanics for a while at the physiotherapy college. Funny enough, at the same college where I studied before. It was a bit weird in the beginning. I was on stand the other side,
Yeah.
but yes, I taught there for a while, for about, I think it was about a couple of not a few semesters, about 2 years, I think.
And what's it like? Because like I go to I don't go to the physio regularly or anything, but like
You shouldn't.
sometimes if I sometimes if I, like you said, priorities.
Yeah,
Sometimes if I go, I've been to I'd say 4 physios in my lifetime,
yeah,
and they largely have like, there's a common thread running through the 4 of them, we'll say. But then sometimes you'll say something that one of the other physios has said to you in the past, and you'll mention that to the person you're with, and they'll be like, "Nah, I wouldn't," like, and they'll like dismiss it. I won't have said, "Oh, another physio told me." I'll just ask like a question,
yeah.
and they'll dismiss it out of hand and be like, "No, no, I would," and they'll go down a totally different
Mm.
route. So like, there is an element of like, I suppose, like subjecticism, or that is that fair? Like, where like depending on what your belief is, like a lot of people believe in, like integrating Eastern medicine into like physiotherapy, and others like don't. And a lot of people think that like, oh, everything is connected, and if this is connected to this, and if we work on this area, it will help this. Whereas other people think like, no, find the root cause of it and then fix that. And then like there seems to be multiple ways that you can approach a problem, which then leads to, I suppose, that subjecticism. Or like, am I being moronic, or is that fair?
No, that's fair to some extent, for sure. I mean, ultimately, I mean, it's not a clear science in a way, because you can say, let's say, okay, I've broken arm, you do an X-ray, okay, that arm is broken. That's like black or white. That's clear. We have scans, etc., at our hands, but as we know, and this thing, if you looked a bit through my material, you can see that I'm not a huge fan of this. For me, this is a small part of the puzzle, right? Like if somebody says, I have a disc in my lower back, says, yeah, so we'll have about 63% other people above the age of 30. It's like, it's pretty common. So ultimately, like I always say, like we operate a bit like doctors 50 years ago, where you have our main tools is, for me, is communication, right? So you come to me and you say, look, I have this problem on my shoulder, and I feel it when I do this, and when I reach back, and I ask back, so how about this? I know not there, but there. So in my brain, what's straight away happening, we call this process clinical reasoning, is I have like 15 highways going up, right? And like, okay, could be this, could be this, could be this. And first I just listen, and most important information comes from you. And then I ask questions, right? I have like 15 parts. I can't treat all of them. So I'm going to start to do some screening questions, and I try to narrow it down. And ultimately I have like, okay, 2 3 options to go into physical examination, and then I look at this and test it and try to either confirm or dismiss a certain thesis, and based on that I treat. Now in the whole interview process you got the scans and the blood tests and whatnot, and it's like a puzzle, right? You piece it together and you say what's most likely the scenario here, because there's no real, that like, what is the truth? Why do you have a back pain? Why do you have a shoulder pain? There could be different scenarios, but I think that's the most important thing of it, because once you can make sense of it, you can confirm it in a physical exam, and then you do a test treatment, like do a test retest, right? You say like, oh, that really hurts here. I test something, I move, I either I teach you something, we do an exercise together, or I release something manually, or crack your neck or whatnot, and you will go up like, wow, that's a lot better, right? So basically my thesis is confirmed. And so you're not just giving random information, you always want to test and retest and see if you're actually correct with this. You want to do this for the patient because you want to get you on board to see, oh, wow, I just changed this and I can actually, this is not just fixed, this is changeable. But also for me, I need to think, do I think down the right route? And so that reasoning process is a mix between, being able to listen, which is actually, for some people really hard, and then try to piece it together, which there's your education, there's your knowledge, but it's also a big part is experience. I mean, I think I treat a lot different today, much more direct and much quicker to the problem than I was 20 years ago. And I've been doing this including my studies in clinical placements for nearly 25 years now. It makes me sound really old now. But so I graduated about 21 years ago, but it's a long study process where you do placements. And so you accumulate stuff, you do things right, you do things wrong. And ultimately it's I think what your physios communicate to you is a summary of what they think, hopefully. Yeah. So and there's obviously the thinking process different, but I agree with you. I mean, you can go to somebody who uses these techniques and that technique, and you might get better with all of them. And
Yeah.
that's okay.
But
But
there's like, you have to be humble as well, I suppose, because like it's very easy to slip into like a kind of confirmation bias where like, you
oh,
think,
totally.
okay, their shoulder is sore. It's obviously, the intercostal muscle or whatever. So then every answer they give you, you'll be like, yep, that fits what I think. Yep, that fits. And then anything that doesn't, you'll be like, we'll swing back to that later on. It's obviously
Exactly.
this. So like, yeah, like it's because it is interesting. And I suppose you're relying a lot on the patients. Like I have shit body awareness, like awful. Like we'll be warming up in the gym, and like Joe, our coach, I vividly remember one day him saying like, "Oh, you really want to feel your glutes firing here?" And I remember thinking in my head like, "The fuck does that feel like?" It's just like I just have no body awareness.
Yeah.
And like he came over, I was like, like he jammed his thumb into the side of my glutes and was like, "Oh yeah, you're grand." Whereas
Yeah.
like in my head, I was like, "Okay, like
Yeah.
if you say so." I just had no idea what it felt like,
Yeah.
because like I didn't play a lot of sport growing up or anything, so I didn't have that kind of
Yeah.
awareness of the mechanics or what was going on. I just knew like, okay, I stand like this and I walk like this or whatever. So then I'd be a shit patient for a physio then, because it's like, how does that feel? It's like, I don't know. Like, it's like, I don't think I'd be very good at saying like, oh yeah, I can feel that wherever, or oh, when I do this, it feels like this. I think, yeah. So I suppose it's like if you go to a dentist, the dentist x-rays your tooth or like pokes at it, it's sore,
Mm.
uses, like you say, their experience and says, okay, that needs a filling, there's a hole there, or oh,
Mm.
there's obviously nerve damage because there's swelling or
Mm.
whatever. Whereas like when it's a physio, like the dentist doesn't say to the patient, how does that, like, like how does that feel?
Yeah.
Because like they can see by the fact that they're almost biting their finger
Just
off that there's
fucking
a
hurt.
problem.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So like it's a I suppose it's a rare patient physician engagement where you're ultra reliant on that communication, or you're ultra reliant on the patients being able to tell you like, it's sore when I do this, this, and this. It's not sore when I do this. And then, there's like, I've been to the physio before where I want to feel better and I want the physio to do a good job. So when they say like, how does that feel? I'm almost fighting the urge to just say, oh yeah, way better, just because I
Yeah.
don't want to disappoint them, or
I,
like, just because I,
I
I don't want it to have not worked.
I say that to patients all the time. I said, okay, is that feeling better, worse? Don't be nice to me. Okay, give it to me straight. I'm a big boy. I can take it. Because that's important, right? You get misled. If someone says, oh, it feels much better, right? And you say, oh, man, I'm so
Yeah.
good. Like I just hit the head, nail on the head and nail, and then the nail on the head. it's called, and you get led down the wrong path. But the dentist, funny enough, my dad was a dentist, so almost went down that route as well. But I said doctors and therapists. I say that a bit in IT language as the hardware specialist and as the software specialist. Now, you obviously know a bit about each other's work, but I need to know if that tendon is torn or there might be a potential rib fracture or before I manipulate that and so on. So you need to be savvy. You need to be able to read scans and whatnot. But generally, hardware is broken, the bone is broken, you cast it, you operate it, whatever, right? And or something like, all right, I sprained it, it looks like it's okay, and then that becomes more of a software issue. Now the doctor says nothing broken, go see a physio, right? And I need to figure it out now. So how do I get this guy better? But like, what is it? Is it like a sprain of the ligament? Is it just a bit of a disjointed ankle? Is it a, God knows what. And so we need to figure out, and that's what I'm passionate about, because that's the thrill of our job, really, is to figure out the puzzle, what's going on. And even better is, I like for us, the best patients are the ones who come in and say, look, every time I don't know, do that tennis serve or in my snatch, I get this pinch up here, or I kind of like toast the bar, I feel like I can't reach back. I need to figure out why this is. It can be a multitude of reasons. And when somebody comes with a function problem and say, look, every time I do this, this, and this, I feel that, but I can do this, I can do that. So again, you piece it together. And this is where you really need to be, is the ingenuity of figuring out what's the problem and also how to address this. And you mentioned that before, there's also, for instance, typical Crossfitters things, right? Here, bicep tendonitis, like here it hurts, we go, it hurts, can't lift my arm. And everybody goes, pokes around here, but that's actually not usually where the problem is. They're almost always reactive and they actually need to go behind here. So always differentiate between source of the pain, as in where the pain originates from, because that tendon is inflamed. But why is the tendon inflamed? Right? Tendon is inflamed because this is too tight, your lats are too tight, shoulder rotates forward, and then if you're in this position, you just can't go overhead, right? And if you keep trying, you just close, close the door, so to speak, so the tendon gets pissed off. And so then there's the third factor, which is how the body responds to it, right? So after a while, like, if I go this way, it hurts. But if I go up like this, it doesn't. If I do my toes to like this, it doesn't hurt. And so all of a sudden you got a trap issue, neck, and so we need to address all of that. Or let's say a good therapist addresses all of that. Or that's what we write on our flag. That's what we strive to do, and that hopefully always works. But again, this is coming back to your question. There's an element of, of course it's objective, but it's an opinion, right? Ultimately, even the patient's explanation is an opinion. But you said before, you said like, I can't feel fuck all in my glutes. I'm not sure if they're actually firing up or not. I can tell, right? You might not feel it, but I can feel, okay, they're working or not. Or I have a way to say, okay, you might not feel it, but can you see how your leg is like jittering when you're trying to control your pelvis? Like, oh yeah, shit, it's worse on the other side. And then, okay, so that's your glutes not doing the trick. Even though we're allergic to this phrase, they're not firing. They usually are firing. It's just that they're not, they're not trained that particular functional angle. And but so then also the patient gets a new reference point. Okay, if that gets more controlled, hang on, now I feel something. So it's our job as well to somebody who doesn't feel their body 100% to make them feel. It's a big part of the problem, right? Typical thing is low back pain, right? Low back pain, we have zero connection to our lower back. We don't know how it looks like. If I ask somebody, so how's your back look like? Is it more arched, round? It's like, oh, well, have a look. Let me have a look. So elbows, hands, knees, we see them all the time. Our lower, you don't never see your back, right? Unless you're a narcissist and look a lot in the double mirrors. But the point is, so how do you can only rehab something if you feel it. I would say you can only strengthen a muscle if it fires up. You can't tune an engine if it doesn't start up. And how can you learn to control a movement if you don't even know, if you don't feel it? You know what I mean? And so often that's actually what you have to go back to. And sometimes, when I started off in this profession, it's funny, you think, okay, that knee problem, that could be a knee problem, it could be meniscus, it could be ligament, it could be muscle. Then you think, but it comes from the hip, it could be from the foot, it could from the whatever, SI joint, pelvis, and so on. And you think, that's knee, right? Because you're fresh off the press, you look at the knee. But then today, after all these years, like you almost like to think, like it may be down the line there's some ankle instability thing. And today, often, funny enough, I go straight to that because I know you sort that out and everything else will fall into place quite often. But you need to sell that to your client, right? If you come to me and say my left shoulder hurts, like, yeah, your left toe is stiff. Like, what? So obviously you need to be able to make that connection. It's a joke because it usually doesn't
Yeah.
happen. Has happened though, but it's rare.
Um, and what's your relationship like? So you mentioned the hardware software thing. Like, what's your relationship like with say like surgeons and surgery? Like, obviously, surgery is, I assume, it's something that you want your clients to avoid if and when possible, because it's probably like it's an extreme measure, I suppose. Like, if you can get like fit and healthy without it, you're probably better off, I assume.
Yeah.
Like, provided it's not like adding years to the process, I suppose. But like, are you like, is recommending surgery for people, is that something that like you're comfortable doing, or is it something that you're kind of reluctant to do, or is it something you'd rather avoid if possible, or how does it sit with you when you say to someone, if you see a scan and be like, fuck, okay, this, like, they need to go under the knife?
Well, I'm comfortable recommending it when it's indicated, right? And that's the main thing. What is indicated? I mean, there's clear cases like trauma, really bad fracture that needs to be plated, for instance. The case is clear, right? But they usually don't show up in my doorstep first. But I get people fresh off the pitch. You need to check a knee and say, look, I think that ACL is gone, but let's let the inflammation settle down, do an MRI scan, and then we'll discuss what we're going to do. Which is, by the way, not necessarily surgery indication by today's standards, but so sometimes it's black and white. But whenever there's a conservative window, let's say, I don't know. I mean, again, you can go at any given time. You and me, I don't know how old you are, Peter, but like, let's say send me at any given time for a scan. You name it, you said, do your left shoulder. And let's do my left shoulder, do an MRI scan. You'll find stuff, right? You'll definitely find stuff because I have like, I don't know how many years of overhead lifting. I have a physical job. I have been knocked out in handball multiple times. I've wiped out on skis. And so there's 100% stuff going wrong, but my shoulders feel fine. I know if I don't keep myself strong and mobile, I probably will be a different story. But you look at the scan and you'll find some little degenerative tears. You'll find some whatever arthritis in your AC joint, or, it always sounds, the report always sounds awful. And I always tell patients, I have never seen an MRI report where it says conclusions, pristine condition, you're fine, go home, right? It doesn't happen. There's always, if you don't see anything in a macroscopic view, you go close and close. And the radiologist basically is like looking at an artwork and just describes what he sees. That's again a scam, but as a layman, if you don't understand those terms, that can freak the shit out of you, right? Because you think I'm really sick. And so it's then my
Yeah.
job to put this into context and say, look, let's say with a shoulder AC joint, you've done a lot of overhead lifting. It's normal. We all have that. Don't worry about that. We'll deal with it. The little tears, I did your test. You have good strength in all directions. So you're either compensating really well or your shoulder functions well. So if the shoulder function is good, it's not a threatening condition, and we're not missing a really important window of opportunity, we go conservative. But coming back to the doctors, my relationship with orthopedic doctors, I work mostly with orthopedics or rheumatologists, GPs, and neurologists, and a few others, right? Mostly in the musculoskeletal field. And my relationship, especially in Dubai, is good. It's a very collegial relationship because in a way, you depend on each other. Because if sometimes I don't know, sometimes I think like, oh shit, can I touch this? Not. And you know what? I'm more comfortable. I won't charge you today. Go and see this guy. He's a good dude, and he will. So, and I'll send him WhatsApp. Say, look, I have this guy. I'm really not sure about that stability there. Can you check it out? Because I need to know. Can I treat, or shall I rather keep my hands off? And that works pretty well. And so it's a bit of a coexistence, which is really important that you work together. And therefore, I only work with
Mm.
doctors. You find plenty of guys that, oh no, it's really bad. You need to do a surgery, and that those people I usually don't work with. My guys, I know
Yeah.
when they say, listen, forget it. This guy needs to go under the knife. I know they need it. And I say, what about this
Yeah.
and this? Yes, you're right, but X, Y, and Z, and so that can happen. And then, but we have all the evidence. You give the client all the thing, and that doesn't happen very often, thank God, though. Because again, especially the stuff which is not trauma, hence an accident, is I say we can always do something, but there's certain things which you just say, look, this is either now really threatening, we have to do it, or it's going to bite you in the ass later on. So we may be, but you just basically give the patient, you give them the whole decision making matrix, and look, this is the situation, we can do this, but that's the risk, we can do that, and that's the benefit, and that's the risk, and then they ask you, what would you do? And so, you know I would probably lean towards that, but I'm happy if you say this, I will go this way, then to help you with that. But in general, I'm definitely conservative. I mean, I'm more and more leaning not easily towards surgery.
Yeah, because like, you mentioned there like being pitch side and like waiting for swelling to go down and stuff. Like there must be an element of pressure there where you think, okay, it's probably this. That's not time sensitive. But then like it could be something that is time sensitive.
Yeah,
You know, and if you're looking at like a mass of fluid
yeah,
and it's kind of like they can't move their leg anyway,
yeah,
so I can't ask, can you bend it this way because I can't move it,
yeah,
and it could be this which can wait 5 weeks. It could be this which needs to be done in 3 days. You know,
yeah,
like I have a friend who injured his knee playing football, and they thought it was his ACL. So said, "Yeah, grand, no rush on that." Turned out it was whatever the thing on the front is. I can't remember the name of it.
patellar tendon.
Um,
Yeah.
I think so, yeah. And they were like, "Oh, this probably should have been done like a week ago."
To
So, like,
to
you know, he
to
was
be,
going in for like
to be
exploratory.
fair, I don't need an MRI to see the patellar tendon is torn, mate. Like,
Okay, well, you weren't there.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
um, but yeah, no, I think like you say, I suppose it's just the experience. Like you build up these, you know, like a list of things you've seen and heard and been, you know, it's just you build up your toolkit, I suppose, by, oh, that this is like that time 4 years ago. I better act in this way, I suppose.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of your, I suppose, more well-known clients will be dealt with primarily online. Is that fair?
Yes. Some. Yeah.
What, what are the challenges of that? Because like, you know, it's you've called yourself a manual therapist a few times,
Yeah.
which implies hands-on.
Yeah.
But then if someone's in America or Ireland or Denmark and you're not, it's kind of difficult to be a manual therapist. Like how, like, do you have to, are you looking at a video saying like, okay, like say on Zoom or whatever, saying like, okay, move around this way, move, how does that feel? That kind of way? Are you purely relying on the storytelling communication side of things? Or are you going to them, bringing them to you, whatever, doing a couple of sessions and then saying, okay, now I have a full picture. We don't need to be with each other for 2 or 3 months because here's the rehab you need to do or the prehab you need to do or whatever, and then meet back up later on? Or how does it work?
Um, well, first of all, I mean, online you can't be a manual therapist, right? You can have the experience of a manual therapist. And that's what I try to teach my clients here in person as well. I said, look, you come to me and you have my hands, and it's obviously good, right? I can release your neck or whatever and give you a boost. But I also tell them, I said, I found, let's say, I don't know, you have a block drip and I crack that back in place. Like, oh, wow, I can rotate, I can breathe. It's great. And that's a bad example, actually. Let's say you have a wry neck and basically work too much the computer and you can't turn, and I can release this and I turn like, oh, so much better. Thank you very much. And then I tell them, I said, look, but you need to do this self-mobilization for the neck because that's the underlying culprit. You need to do that stretch to maintain it that way. And probably we need to work a bit on your upper back strength to just give you a bit more resilience, hydration, etc., etc., right? And I said, if you don't do these things, there's a good chance you'll be back, right? And I always tell them, it's like, I fixed enough. They said, yeah, but you feel better. I said, yes, but like, you know, I always tell you don't really need my hands. You need the exercise to stay well, but you can do completely without my hands if you just do what I tell you to. But if I only use my hands, you don't do exercise, you'll be repeat business, right? And so I learned over the years, looping back into the online thing now, just in a second, I learned over the years a bit like more and more I mean, in the beginning, you know, you come off manual therapy degree and you feel like you can, you know, manipulate and do the cool shit, and everybody you walk out and you're feeling great and you look like a hero. And yes, these moments are great, but it's not a lasting effect. It's just a boost, right? And then more and more I realized, okay, prescription of exercises, patient education, telling them, okay, this is the problem, these are the exercises, and this is why I need to do them, and that's what's going to be the benefit. And if you don't do that, it's going to, yeah. And I realized more and more with time that sometimes you just, you know, feel like the situation is too acute, and so you give them only exercise before you touch them, and they come back and they're already better. And then you realize, okay, maybe my hands-on treatment is maybe not the most important thing. In an ideal world, you can combine it. You know, manual therapy has, in some countries, has earned a bit of a bad reputation but I disagree there. I think it's a combination of things. Ultimately, we hold a lot of tools, right? And you can stick a needle in something, you can manipulate something, and treat a trigger point, use a massage gun, all this shit with like what's around. But ultimately, it's just a tool in a toolbox. But what really counts is understanding the dysfunction, what happened here, and how do we change it, right? Last thing. So I mean, I slithered into this a bit like by accident, to be honest, in this online thing. At first, I was like, how the fuck shall I do that? Right? I mean, you're over there and I'm here, like, and it's like, come on, give it a go. Maybe you can help a bit. And so, with my first ever client, it was actually Kyle from Training Think Tank. He sent me one of his clients, and or sent me, he's just got me in contact. Said, can you help him out? And I said, oh, I don't know. He's in North Carolina and I'm in Dubai, so how do we do this? But let's give it a go. And long story short, it worked beautifully. And I was like, hey, that was actually pretty good. So combined with my experience of realizing is the exercise prescription is one of the key things. Then I realized, okay, maybe I can do this actually remotely. So I tried with a few more clients and it worked really well. So looping back into your question is like, I mean, first of all, it's deciding what problem qualifies for such an approach. And then what I usually do, I send people a questionnaire where they like in really great detail as possible, tell me like, what's the problem? Where do you feel it? When do you feel it? What can you do? What can you not do? Is there this and this and this? And then I read through this and look, does this qualify for such an approach? And usually it does. And then we jump on a Zoom call. And the Zoom call is more like, again, digging deeper. What I said before, when all these highways open up in my head, okay, poking a bit deeper and trying to figure out, okay, what's the problem? You have to be much more precise. And I believe
Mm.
if I would have done this 15, 20 years ago, it would have been impossible because I didn't have the experience for it. Because now when I hear something, like you can hear like, okay, it sounds like this, sounds like this. You're much quicker in your head and you can figure out what the problem is much quicker. And that's the most important thing. But once you figured out what it is, then in a clinic, I would do a test treatment, right? I would do a physical exam. And sometimes online, I need a physical exam. And sometimes I send them a list of self-assessments, self-tests, and have them fill them and send it to me. They can slow it down, slow motion, and then send back by WhatsApp, or I'd send me more that angle, this angle. And then based on that, I explain them exactly what I think the problem is, and that's one of the most important things. Look, this is like your squat there, you have your left SI joint hurts in your back, but actually your right ankle mobility is really poor, and then there you have that stability issue, etc. You can filter this out quite quickly. And again, comes into confirmation bias, what you said before, right? But with these big clients, obviously you're a little bit more under pressure because that better work, right? You can't just like, oh no, I like hips, so let's treat the hips. So you need to obviously nail it. And then I send them a test protocol and where they like I address these things and I want to know exactly, okay, how does that feel left and right compared? How's the mobility here compared to that? How do you feel the effort is when you have to do that exercise in the right side compared to left? And with this, I narrow it down, it's like a funnel, you narrow it down more and more and more. And with each program, you're getting more precise. But normally, I realized with the test program, I nailed quite a few things. And then the client says, wow, I didn't realize. I'm like, I can squat 2 to 2.5 times my body weight, but I can't lift my leg sideways, or something small. There's little details. And the devil is always in the detail, honestly. And it's trying to find this. So I haven't really answered your question. Do I meet them? So most of them actually I don't. Most of them I meet them on Zoom, and we don't do Zoom sessions. People think like we do like a Jane Fonda session with like, I do this 15 times. We don't do this. Like we're figuring it out. We're discussing. We explain what I have to do, and then I send them a program with YouTube videos, and they follow that. And then the most important thing is feedback, right? I mean, they're my eyes and ears. I can't see them. I don't know what they feel. I don't know what it looks like unless they send me videos and detailed feedback of how they feel. And that's how that works. And yes, I mean, I had a few of them that travel here and they come here and stay with me for a week or two, and then we'll it's obviously great then to work like this and meet them fun in person. You can probably then filter it down even better. But it actually works out. The majority of them I've never met in person or never met for treatment or much later when we sorted it out already, and it works normally pretty well. But the key is,
And
I realize people are really into it, and they talk like it's a really interactive thing. Has to be because I can't see. I don't stand next to them, so I need to know what they're feeling, what they're doing, and the people who take that serious enough and do this, they have great results.
yeah, like so, um, I have a few questions, and I'm not sure where to go first. You mentioned Kyle training thing. How did that relationship start? Because I assume he didn't just like
No,
randomly pluck a
no,
physiotherapist to
exactly.
send one of his clients to.
Especially a guy at the time they never had Instagram. Nobody knew who I was, right? It happened through Andre again. Andre was coached by Kyle at the time, and he had a problem in his body, and he actually just qualified for the regionals at the time in Madrid, and so funny enough, I was new to Instagram at the time. It's a funny story. I told that once before, but I was new to Instagram. No idea what I do with this. And a friend of mine talked me into it and said, like, you should have Instagram. I was like, why? For this and this. But I don't want to share that stuff. Who wants to hear that? So anyway, long story short, I went on it. I said, all right, mate, I have an Instagram. What do I do now? I said, well, do you follow people? I said, who do I follow? Like, what do you mean? Anyway, I found
Where do I
Andre.
follow them to?
Sorry?
Where do I follow them to?
Exactly. What do you mean follow? Not a stalker. So I found Andre by accident, and he had really good content. It sounded like a genuine guy, and he said openly in a post, he said, "Oh, I'm finally," and you know his story with his brother, right? It's like he's driving force, and he told his story and said, "I have this injury, and I've seen like 5 therapists, and nobody could help me. Everybody, and I'm afraid that maybe I have to pull out of regionals." And I just thought to myself, that can't fucking happen. That's not so difficult. So I sent him a message, right, saying, "Mate, you have this problem. I can help you. Come over. I won't charge you."
It's your big toe on your left foot.
Exactly. And he got it straight away. Anyway, long story short, I sent him a message, come in, I'll fix it for you. And he turned me down first because I probably thought like, what an idiot is that? Just like reaching out randomly. And I thought like, no, again.
Yeah, this guy has no followers and he's only following me. This
Exactly.
isn't
He has
this
three
is weird.
followers. That was me. And he wants to help me. Must be really good. Anyway, so a
Yeah.
few days later, he called me back. He said, actually, somebody really messed me around here. So if the offer still stays. And we managed to get him in 2-3 sessions. I straightened him out. So he was good. And he was back training. So from not being able to wash his hair with his arm, he could do ring muscle ups again, etc. So it was a pretty straightforward solution. And anyway, from that, Kyle reached out, was really grateful. He thanked me for it. And a few weeks later, then sent me another one of his clients from the States. And that's the first real remote approach. So that's how this came about. And so actually, it's Andre and Kyle that played. I like mentioning this because I'm eternally grateful because they played a pivotal role in this whole thing. That how this came about. I would have never considered this before, to be honest.
And is that so? That's how is that how you got in touch with like Sarah and Sam, and because they were both with Training Thing. Although you were with Sarah beforehand, were you?
Sorry.
Were you with Sarah before she went to Training Think Tank or during? No,
No,
during.
during
Yeah,
that was
during.
actually through Max, but I mean, it took a turn. I mean, from Kyle's client, then this is the interesting thing, and that's what I love about it. It's like he went then from Dubai to North Carolina. From there, the next client in Bangkok, no, Koh Samui it was, and from there it went to Denmark. From there it went to Taiwan, and you name it, literally spinning around the globe. And you talked about time zones before, so world, what do they call the world clock on the iPhone is my best
Yeah.
friend because otherwise it will fuck up every single call probably. And that's it came about, and then so I had a few good athletes on there, not like super well known, but good athletes. And I was never really targeted top athletes. I just want to help people. If you have a problem, you want to reach out. If you like somebody can't help me there, then I mean, guys, I didn't design this for high level athlete, but I was lucky enough to definitely have quite a few on my roster right now. And then I think I met
Is
Matt.
it a bit of a knife edge though? Because like, say, you mentioned there that you want like the ideal client for someone like you to have is someone who's all in and someone who's like, tell me what to do and I'll robotically do it. Like I'll religiously make it part of my daily practice. And I'm already hydrating well. I'm already fueling myself well. I'm not eating shit. I'm not like, being lethargic, or I'm not like taking any shortcuts. Like, so that they're going to do what you tell them to do, and that they'll do it to the best of their
Mm,
ability, and that it'll be a daily process. Like versus say someone who's like, oh, how can I fix this? And be like, ah, fuck it, that seems like a bit of effort. Like I'll just shrug instead and
yeah,
like hold myself differently or whatever. But then the flip side of that is it's obviously high pressure then, because if this is their livelihood, or if they're hoping it's going to become their livelihood, and the problem doesn't get fixed, or another problem arises, like, it's, say someone like Sarah, it's kind of like, she's going to do everything that you tell her to do, because that's her personality, that's her, like, she's just really driven. But then the flip side of that is it's so high pressure because she's such a well-known person in the sport, and she wants to do really well in the sport and should do really well in the sport.
Yeah.
So then you're obviously going to shoulder, or, like, logically or illogically, you're going to shoulder some of the blame if that doesn't happen, because it's hard not to take that personally, I suppose. Like, it's hard not to bring that on yourself, I suppose. Like, when it's just like, it's really knife edgy, where it's like they're going to do exactly what I tell them, but if it doesn't work, I'm fucked.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, you are. But it's I don't know. I mean, I try to treat, for me, if you come on as a client, you have that utmost respect, and I give you what I got. I give you my best job, and as I think that's important. I treated. I worked with 2009 and 10. I worked for a while with Federer, and that was a situation very early where I thought as well, like, oh my God, if I fuck this up, I'm all over the newspapers, right? But then you think no, you can't think like this because you can't do your job. And the same with like somebody like Sarah or some others. It's like, yes, but ultimately, these are driven people, want to do a job really well, and I'm reasonably good at what I do. I believe I'm decent at what I do, and I know what my skills are. And I think the key thing is to be very honest about what you can do, what you cannot do, right? I know what I can deliver, and I know what I can make happen. What I can promise you is that you get my absolute best job every single time. And if I don't know something, I'll tell you, but I'll try to find out. And if I can't find out, I find somebody who can, right? And so this is where network comes into the game. I mean, in a case like this, you pull in, again, comes about network, you pull in other people, you ask, for instance, like, I mean, I had sometimes a call with a surgeon from we had a little scare at one point during the rehab process, and then I had, the first thing I did is, like, I got a message from the States and this, so I got on a call 5 o'clock in the morning with a mate here who was happily already, he's an orthopedic, he hooked me up with a guy in Paris, one of his friends, and then, all of a sudden you're connecting everywhere. So it's but ultimately it's like I think it's about honesty, honestly, what you can achieve, what can you deliver and what not. I mean, in Sarah's case, I mean, I started, it's Max who got me on board, and actually, it's not funny, but it's like today is the anniversary of her ACL tear, right? Today, a year ago exactly, it happened, and we started actually working a few weeks before that, and successfully sorted out the problem which she had for a very, very long time. And then this happened. That was just really bad luck. That was a freak accident. It just happened, and then we had to deal with it, right? You just had, first you think, oh fuck, and then when you have clarity, you make a plan, you regroup, and off you go. And it was a time as well when, I mean, I haven't, for instance, I've done one, doing online rehab, as in rehabilitation after a surgery, is a really tricky stuff. So far, it's more like people have pains, they hurt themselves, they have pain somewhere. That's, for me, I find relatively easy. If it's non-structural, that's an easy job usually. But when it comes to a full rehab, that's different. And there's actually me then also who said, look, she wanted me to do her rehab because we have built up some trust in that short period we worked together, and I've proven her that I can deliver. But I said, look, I want to do this, and I really want to be on this team, but I need somebody on the ground. She decided after surgery in Iceland, I said, I need somebody on the ground. I need eyes in the ears there. I'm more comfortable with this. And so we found ourselves in the shape of Runar in Iceland, a good physio who did the groundwork, and we consulted together. And then as soon as he was ready to kind of get into the training programs, I started to take over, and we started to do this together with Max. And it's been a real team effort. And then more and more, the physio there had to do a little bit less, and we did more programming. So it's important that you say what he can do, what he cannot do, what he's comfortable with, and what he's not comfortable with. And I think I do this in front of everyone. If I feel like I can't do this, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes
When
sense.
did you work with? No, it does. Yeah. When did you work with Federer?
That was in 2009 and 10. So he has his home base here. I mean, it's not something I advertise greatly, but this is one of those high pressure moments. But he has his second home base here, right? So he trains here a lot because usually when the weather is bad in Europe, the weather is great here, and so they go through on the way
Yeah.
to the Australian Open and then on the other way to the US Open. And they train often here, and so he spent 3, 4 weeks here at the time, and then he used to take care of him in this period and few
And was
tournaments.
that a Swiss connection? Like, was that did you know each other, or did someone in his team know you beforehand,
No,
or was
actually
it
not. I
because
mean, I
you're
don't know.
there?
The Swissness maybe helped. I'm not sure, possibly, but
The Swissness.
it was through a client who was actually the guy who handled some of his business, like property and whatnot, and all the like the
Yeah.
local business here. And he gave me a call and said, "You wanna work with him?" I said, "Not sure." Okay. No, so that was
I
this.
heard
I,
I heard an insane stat about him. Um, during it was like, oh, I heard it like last year. They were going through all the top, the Forbes list of like sports earnings or whatever, and it was like they had them broken down, and it was like, say, Ronaldo, like Messi. I can't remember anyone else on the list really, but like they were going through all the different sports, and it was like soccer players, golfers, tennis players, whatever. But it was to do with like direct earnings from the sport versus earnings outside the sport,
yeah,
and it was, as in like, what did their name get them versus what did their ability get them, we'll say, or their performances, and like, fuck, I'm not going to remember any of the numbers, but I'll just make up some numbers
it's
just
pretty
for
big.
the purposes of making my point. But we'll say like Ronaldo earned like, you know 60 million, and like 45 million of that was through like playing, and then like direct sponsorships from playing. So like, whoever Man United sponsors are, like, paid him to do stuff or whatever. And then it was similar with Messi and all those. And then where the gap started to appear was like sports that hadn't been happening. So like football was happening, but it was happening behind closed doors. But like tennis wasn't happening. But it was something like, it was like Federer's was like, he earned nothing from playing the sport.
Mm.
Like in that period of time, he didn't earn any money at all from playing the sport, but he earned like a crazy amount of money from like all outside sponsorship deals and like property and stuff. But like, it was remarkable how much money he earned
Staggering ratio,
from
yeah.
not
Yeah,
lifting a tennis racket
yeah,
for like, not, he just didn't do his sport for 2 years, and he earned like
yeah.
more than, he was like number 20 on the list or something. But yeah, that it was just crazy. What's the most common sport that you deal with now? Is CrossFit up there, or are there other sports that are up there?
I would say at the moment it's CrossFit, yes, for sure. Because A, it's a really big scene here in Dubai. B, I think also a bit through my probably online presence and so on. Is I mean, already before I had the high level athletes on my roster. Is it's
Well, it's obviously gonna blow up massive after this. Like this episode, when this episode comes out, you'll be
yeah, spread the word, mate. Do it. I'll rely on you.
you, you, you'll have an extra one person in touch.
I need backup there,
Yeah.
man. It's like the, um, it's CrossFit. It's definitely. I mean, I see footballs. I see ultra runners quite a bit as well. And to be
Hmm.
honest, I see anybody who wants to see me. But in terms of sports, I mean, I used to when I came to buy rugby is really big. Rugby people go and see rugby people. I treat them, and I
Hmm.
see triathletes and all this. But I treat anything musculoskeletal, but definitely have a lot of athletes. But also have to, you have back and neck pain and so on. It's really bread and butter. But CrossFit is pretty I mean, or let's say generally strength conditioning, fitness plus CrossFit is it's a young
Yeah.
town here, and like you have a population with fitness and health is really important, and it's a bit like LA, there's the body cult and beach is like is big, and so people really spend a lot of money and effort on it, and so therefore there's injuries. So that's probably what I see the most, I would say. Yeah.
What's the most common injury you see in CrossFitters? Is it that bicep tendon?
I think shoulders are very common. Shoulders and backs, definitely lower backs and shoulders. Uh, Elbow tendonitis, these or tendinopathies are quite common. It's quite a multitude of things, really. And
Yeah.
but I think I would say shoulder is probably the winner. I'd say at the moment, at least, it's a bit seasonal. And there's a CrossFit little niggles they not even mention. It's like me, I casually just brushed across, like, yeah, I had a few muscle tears, but who cares? Um, I mean, you know, CrossFitters love to talk
It's like,
about
oh
their
yeah,
injuries.
I haven't been able to scratch my head in 6 months, but
Exactly,
other than that, I'm fine.
exactly. I wash my hair like that, but but it's all right. I can still snatch. Yeah,
Yeah. Um. Yeah. No, it's interesting. Like, because I suppose, like, because it's such a like, it's a high impact, like, high speed, like, multimodal sport. So like, it's gonna, like in football, you think, like say GAA here, it's like hamstrings.
yeah,
Like that's the most common thing to go is hamstrings. Whereas like with CrossFit, it's like, well, I mean, if someone's doing like an excessive amount of box jumps, or if someone's doing like an excessive, like there's so many different things in use all the time that like, yeah, it must be hard to nail down one thing.
yeah. We have the
Um,
same challenges like coaches as well, right? You prepare for the unexpected, right? You expect the
mm,
unexpected, and so whether you prepare somebody for one push-up or for, I don't know, 5 times whatever 12 handstand push-ups, etc., or like the combination, right? You need to go from like 30 barbell cycling, 30 power snatches into straight into this is a different demand on the body than just doing, heavy deadlifts or heavy squats, or just
yeah.
doing like a 1 rep max snatch. It's a different thing. So the coaches, for them is a challenge to prepare, but also for us in a way, for the patient.
Um, you mentioned that Instagram and that you joined Instagram and stuff. Is like, do you get frustrated by Instagram? Like, say there's a lot of coaches, there's a lot of physios, there's a lot of like movement experts, some experts and some self-proclaimed experts, I suppose.
Mm.
And there's a lot of accounts that go through, like, oh, if this is happening to you, you should do this, and if that's happening to you, you should do this. Like for movement and stuff. Um, like, it does it annoy you? Like, are you like, have you ever in danger of becoming a bit of a keyboard warrior and like being, like commenting on posts, being like, shut the fuck up, you shouldn't be telling people to do that, or like,